So I watched the Backrooms yesterday, and I wanted to do this then, but it was a bit late, and I feel like I needed to really have the whole movie sort of sit with me, and I still agree with my opinion. And also, this is technically a new format because I'm not doing the face cam thing. I just feel like it was a bit too awkward in the way, maybe because I put in a rectangle aspect ratio instead of a square like normal people do, but I feel like just having the whole PowerPoint here is a lot better, but I'll see. Now, I will say, I am very biased to this. I'm very biased to this genre because it's my favorite, but that also means that it's very easy for me to find something that's kind of unoriginal or just a better version of a movie. So I feel like I am qualified to talk about this, and this is probably why I only really talk about horror, because I feel like it's the only genre that I can say something that's unique. Not saying that I'm the expert, but what I am saying is that is my comfort food, and I can tell what type of audience this would be for. So for instance, I think a recent movie that released called Hokum, I feel like for a general audience, most people would like it. I feel like if you watch mainly movies of the horror genre, you probably wouldn't, because it's a bit unoriginal. But apparently that's a hot take. Apparently people really liked that movie, but that's not what we're talking about. I think ratings are kind of stupid, not in the sense of you shouldn't rate, because I feel like it is a fun thing to do. I just think that people take it way too seriously. People won't watch something because it doesn't have a high rating, which I get. It's not really promising when you see that no one likes this one thing. I feel that people see ratings in a weird way, rather than a number on how good the media is. I would see it as the percentage that a general audience would like it, or the chance that you would like it from a general audience's perspective. Because even on something like Rotten Tomatoes, you have the critics and the audience scores, which they usually differ a lot. And then you have sites like IMDb and Letterboxd, which I feel like they're both two different generations, and a lot of the times some movies are rated higher than the others. If you just look at the highest rated movies on Letterboxd and the highest rated on IMDb, they're sort of different, but the Backrooms did have a pretty consistent score. Okay, now these are the positives, because I do have a lot to say about this. It's a really faithful adaptation because it does just feel like the YouTube videos, but with a higher budget, a way higher budget. The set design, if you want a movie that just looks nice, this is it. A lot of the times you'll just be looking at the background. I feel like if I was watching this at home, I'd probably want to pause and just look at things. It's obviously well thought out and not lazy. It is very hard to make rooms look unique, especially when all the walls are pretty much the same. So they get really creative with it, and I don't think people are praising it enough. The ending was really good. I can't really talk about that now because it's not on the spoiler part, but I think the ending really set what I thought about the movie. The atmosphere, and obviously the set design goes with that, but the score was, it was okay. I feel like it was mainly just the cinematography and the whole set design that makes the atmosphere really good. The pacing, I really like the pacing. I think the opening was a good addition because you don't really get to see much for quite a bit, and for some people that's a negative for some reason. I'm gonna get onto the pacing on the next one because I thought it was really good, but some people had some things to say about it. Again, the cinematography, a lot of things. Well, I'm not a cinematographer, so I don't really know the buzzwords. There was a lot of shots where the main subject, or not really the foreground, but the main subject was in the center, and it looked really nice. There was obviously some sort of symmetrical theming that they were trying to do. For some reason, I feel like the sky looked really fake. Like it looks like a set. I don't know if that's intentional or to like go with the dreamy aesthetic look, little thing that they're doing. I heard someone say that there's this sort of David Lynch feel of having all these things and not giving you the full answers, which they're not saying that it's on the level of something like David Lynch, but it's on the same sort of, they have the same idea pretty much, and you can make your own theories. And I think the more you actually do your own research on the lore, you can get a lot of different answers. It's very open-ended because they don't tell you that much. Like, you don't really know that much about the entities or how the Backrooms or how the Backrooms even exist. Like, who made it? We don't really know. And that kind of goes into my next point of not treating the audience like idiots, because I feel like so many movies just have a random exposition dump where it wasn't really needed, or just has an opening dialogue info dump. Now, some movies do kind of need it. Some I don't really think it was necessary. I'm really glad they didn't do that for this. I guess the most of an opening dialogue you get is the actual opening, where it's a kind of separate from the main story, but not really. The negatives is there was some messy dialogue, especially in the very intense scene. I feel like in the most tense scene, they kind of fumbled it a little bit. I also wanted to add that was a pretty cool Texas Chainsaw nod. I don't think anyone has really said that, but I could just be going crazy because I actually can't. It's a dinner scene, okay? The characters are good, but not amazing. They're not one note, but we don't really know their lore. Like, one of the characters has a wife that we don't really see. It doesn't really matter, but it would have been cool to have a couple of minutes with that character's wife and his actual house. We do get to see on the second main character, but is still a bit not that much. But I feel like there was a good amount of lore without it feeling overbearing. But then when you compare the two characters, it feels very one-sided, which it kind of makes sense. Now, I said probably need to watch the source material. I don't actually really know if that's true. I just remember when I finished watching it, I just heard a couple of people say that it was a bit confusing, which I don't really get. I feel like, yeah, there were some bits that they didn't explain everything, but I feel like it's pretty obvious. And I think they were specifically talking about the ending. Now, this is my main complaint, that people were saying that it was slow. I feel like if you think this is slow, you need to get off TikTok, because it isn't slow. And I feel like if the movie just went straight into the Backrooms and then it was like, boom, there's an entity right there, I feel like that would be really bad. It would be cool, but there would not be much of a story to tell. It would just be characters walking around the Backrooms for 90 minutes. It's how some people say that the House of Wax remake was slow, when to an extent I sort of get, because they only arrive at the first kill happens 45 minutes into a under 2-hour movie, but there was necessary build up for that to happen. And I think in the quote-unquote slow bits, if you're entertained by the characters and what's going on, then it's not really that slow. If you're not, then I guess it is, but just get off your phones and just watch the movie. Okay, so this is the part where we get to the characters. So I don't even think my mouse will show. The character on the top is Clark, who is the main character pretty much. His whole sort of he's introduced in a therapy scene where we're told that he got kicked out by a significant other in a house that he is renting for and everything, and he's staying at the store, and he very much is he's not all there. He projects a lot. You start to see that the more the movie goes on, where a lot of things aren't his fault, and he kind of gets people involved in a lot of bad things are his fault, and he looks for other ways to make it not his fault. I think he's an interesting character, and I feel like the way he was written made it very unpredictable. Maybe sometimes a bit of a weird turn, but I can't really get into that. Mary is a character that was the therapist and is pretty much told about the Backrooms from Clark, but she's obviously very skeptical since he didn't actually show her how to do it. He just said that, oh yeah, there's this weird mystical place there's a weird place in this store I own without any pictures or any evidence, and he kind of explained it in a weird way, which I would understand. I feel like they wrote that part really well, where you've seen something so weird that you don't even know how to describe it, and if you try to even explain it slowly, you're going to sound insane, but you kind of probably need to tell someone, and I feel like probably telling a therapist is the best choice. Now, from what I can gather, and maybe I'm being stupid, there was a subplot with Mary's mother and her not wanting Mary to go outside or anything. From what I gathered, it could be related to the Backrooms. Like, maybe she knows and she just didn't tell Mary. And I feel like maybe the reason Clark actually did tell Mary is because I feel like maybe Clark didn't have any friends, because the only people he really tells about it is his therapist and his co-workers. We don't see anyone else. Obviously, he has a significant other, but they're not really on good terms. And maybe he doesn't have any family, which is probably why he's living in the store he owns. I feel like this is probably one of the best films of the year I've seen. Oh no. But this is probably one of the best films I've seen of the year so far. I would put in my top 5. I do want to rank horror movies of the year so far, and this would definitely be up in the top 3. I would definitely say watch it as soon as you can. You can wait for it to be on streaming, but I feel like the big screen experience is probably the best. And for a general audience and not people that exclusively watch horror, I would still say to watch it. Maybe you won't like it as much as me, but I don't feel like you won't dislike it. I do agree for a general audience score that a 3.5 or 7 out of 10 average is, it seems like a right score to have. I would give it like a 4.5 out of 5. My only problems really being the small negatives I just said and some spoilers that I can't really get into right now. I am going to now. Also, the second image isn't from the Backrooms, it's from The Ring. So halfway through the movie, when Clark tells his co-workers to go to the Backrooms as well, he does have a lot of precautions, like the whole rope thing, but I feel like him doing that was a good way to show of how much he kind of pushes people into danger. Maybe I'm getting the wrong idea, but I feel like there was that whole speech at the dinner scene about pushing people away, and all the people he did bring semi-close to him are dead because of him. Obviously, I don't think that was in his intention, but he went to a point where he did snap and he did kill one of them, and he was going to kill Mary at some point, but had a change in heart. I feel like that whole dinner scene, it could have done with like a 10-minute scene with him sort of changing, because I do think he's a bit morally questionable, but I don't think he was an all-round bad person. He was just a bit pathetic, not a serial killer, pretty much. I feel like that's the only part of the movie that I can't really defend. Some people say, oh yeah, it's meant to be that way, which I don't. Just because it's meant to be that way doesn't mean it's good. I will say, maybe that being cut off was right. I'm still not sure, but I thought about at the dinner scene, I was thinking in my head, obviously, he's gonna let her free and then they're gonna solve how to get out of the Backrooms, like typical horror movie formatting. That didn't happen, which I thought was really smart. This was also the first time we see the entity, and I thought it was really smart that the person that kills him is him, pretty much, and even was going to kill Mary, but she's not really dead or alive. I will have to say the entities do look really good. There are some bits that do look a bit too CGI, but that's a really, really tiny complaint. The ending was so good. I thought that it was a bit, I did think it was a tiny bit predictable. I was just like, they kind of escaped a bit too quickly. Obviously not. That was so well written, and I feel like that really boosts the rating. I feel like it added to the amount of suspense that they were already building up. The Backrooms is canonically you can escape it, but it's very, very difficult, and I think it makes sense from someone that doesn't know anything about it to just randomly figure that out. I would like it to be a franchise, but I feel like it would be a bit too formatish. But I love format. I love movies that have a certain sort of format, like Final Destination, and you can kind of put in the same category of horror because it's a movie that's constantly trying to make you feel this sense of suspense and dread, because what they're dealing with is pretty much inescapable with a very, very low chance of survival. So if they were to do a sequel, I would say maybe let them have the good ending. I'm not really sure if I would want it to be a franchise because a lot of people weirdly complain about that. But then when there was like a bunch of Friday the 13th movies and a bunch of Screams, no one really complains until now. And it could just be because we have the internet, but I don't know, I feel like a lot of people complain about things now than they did back then. People complain about remakes being too much, where remakes were always being constantly made. But that's nothing to do with this movie. I mean, if you're on here, you probably already watched it, but watch it.